Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 22 of my Android development tutorial. Today we're going to be streamlining a lot of the code that we've been writing since part 18 of this tutorial, which if you haven't watched it, I provide a link in the upper right hand corner to it. You should definitely watch that because this is a big app we're making here. I'm also going to show you how to call activities from list fragments. We're going to talk about passing data between activities and a whole bunch more. So I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so previously we had two activities, one in which, and if you can't see this, view it full screen, this is an HD video. Basically we had one activity and it just displayed and allowed you to enter the name, street, city, phone number, and whether you contacted the person. Then we had a list of all those contacts, and previously we were using dummy sort of code. What we're going to do in this tutorial is we're going to allow you to click on one of these guys and then bounce over to this screen and change the information inside of it, and a whole bunch of other different things. So let's take a look at the code. Okay, so here we are inside of Eclipse, and something is bothering me here. If you look down here inside of this on create inside of Census App.java, that's where we are, you're going to see that we create a Fragment Manager, and I went over all of why we're doing this to basically add these fragments to the activity. Well, if you take a look at contact list activity, we're doing the exact same thing. The only thing that changes is this line right here where we specifically change and use a different fragment. Let's look over at Census App, and you can also see here, instead we are creating a different type of fragment. And that is it. That is the only thing that is different. So what we're going to do is we are going to take all this repeated code and put it in its own class. And then I'm going to show you how to call a different fragment. So let's just come in here and let's just grab this guy, Fragment Manager, and let's just copy all of this information. Then we're going to jump over into Fragment Activity Builder.java. And this guy then is going to be used to handle all that repeated code. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to have this guy extend Fragment Activity. And of course we have to get the library for that, and of course we have to put an uppercase F there. So we'll come in and we'll add our library. Okay, got that library set up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and then I'm going to go to source, and then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say override implement methods. Then in the window that pops up, I'm going to look for on create, and here it is, the specific one with the bundle. And I'm going to say I want that, and just let it be set for the first member, and then hit OK. So there we go, we got that all set up. Now we're going to leave that call to super in there, and then we're going to paste in all of the code that we repeated in the other two classes. So there's all that information. Let's get rid of these comments altogether. Now I'm not going to go in here and cover again exactly what's going on, and if this is all messed up, you can just select all, go into source, and then do correct indentation, and everything will be corrected. And yes, I know that can be set up with a shortcut. I'm going to leave everything here exactly the same. I'm going to be creating our Fragment Manager just like before. We're going to define the fragment as fragment container, which is that XML file, which I've talked about numerous different times. But then, of course, we get to the problem of, well, we got to call two different fragments here. It's not always going to be contact fragment. How are we going to solve that issue? Really simple, actually. We're going to come up here before on create, and we're going to define a method that must be implemented. And what it's going to do for us is going to implement the right fragment, or make sure that the fragment is converted into the right type. So I basically have to come in here and go protected abstract, and that's why this is an abstract class, and it's going to return a fragment. And that is all we need to do. We basically are saying you have to implement this method because we're going to be relying on it existing. And once again, we're doing this to make sure that Census App gets a contact fragment while contact list activity gets a fragment contact list. Then all we need to do is copy that and then come on down here and replace this guy right here with a call to that method, which we are now going to set up over in Census App.java as well as contact list activity. But before we do that, we have to come up here because we're going to have them extend the Fragment Activity Builder, which we just created here. So back into Census App.java, and then we're going to change this from Fragment Activity to Fragment Activity Builder and save that. And it's going to say, hey, you need to implement some methods that you didn't implement. No problem, just add those in there. And it did so. Then we're going to be able to go into on create and just delete all of this information, all gone. And all we have to do is worry about what we're going to do here inside of Create Fragment, which it forced us to use. Another thing that I want to be able to do here is, remember I said I want the lists whenever you click on one of the items that we're going to pop up the right contact. Well, to be able to do that, I'm going to need to store the contact ID. So whenever this guy's called, I'm going to go and create contact ID number and cast this to UUID. And to get that, we're going to go get intent and then get serializable extra, and that is going to be information that is going to be pulled from contact fragment, which we haven't done yet, but we're going to do in a second, and it's going to be called contact ID. Like I said, we're going to create that in a second. That's why there's an error there, but we need to get the library for this, so import that. Now to pull in the information into Census App, because Census App is where we're going to be changing the contact's information, we're going to need to create an instance of contact fragment, which was previously done inside of Census App, and pass in the ID so the proper contact data is going to be displayed on our screen. So to do that, so scroll up a bit, we go return new contact fragment, because we want a contact fragment to be used with Census App, because that's what we got rid of whenever we created fragment activity builder.java. And then we're going to go new contact fragment and pass in contact ID number. And it's going to get us the right amount of information. We're going to have to create this method, and we're going to have to create this guy. And that is all we need to do with Census App. Now we need to jump over into contact list activity, but again we're going to stop here briefly because this guy is also going to extend Fragment Activity Builder, and it's going to handle what happens whenever this is created, so we can just delete this just like we did before. Fragment Contact List, remember that's the thing we're going to be changing here, and then it's going to say, hey, we need to implement that abstract method that we had, so let's bring it in here. There it is. And remember I said that we need to return or cast to the right fragment, and I told you to remember Fragment Contact List. Well, that's the reason why, and that's going to bring in the right fragment. So just those couple little changes got rid of a lot of repeatable code, so that's awesome. So now we got this all cleaned up, and of course we can come in here and delete these libraries since we no longer need them. So let's save that. Now let's jump over and let's look at Census App and exactly what's going on here. Well, one of the very first things that jumps out at me is this error right here, which is inside of contact fragment. We want to store the contact ID for each of the contacts so we can pull in the right amount of information. So to do that, we're going to jump up into contact fragment, and here we are. And then right here at the very opening of it, we're going to store the ID number for the current contact. And to do that, we are going to define a key value pair, and we're going to call it contact ID, just like you saw before. And this tends to confuse some people because I am making this final. Well, the final part of this is the name, and I'm going to give it a name that is going to be very specific to my application so I don't have to worry about any conflicts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put new think tank Census App, and then contact ID. So this is the key part of the key value pair. Alright, so that's the reason why we want to use a unique name, and because it's a key and the key doesn't change, the value changes, that's the reason why we are marking it as final, so we know that it will never change. Then we jump back over into Census App again, and you see new contact fragment, and that is being called from contact fragment. So that means we have to create this method, new contact fragment, over inside of contact fragment.java. So let's go there. And I'm going to come in here right after I created the contacted checkbox, and I'm going to say public static contact fragment is what it's going to be returning, because remember that's what Census App needs to display a contact fragment. And then I can take the name of my method, and it's going to be getting a unique identification number, just like we had previously. And then to pass this information back and forth between activities, we need to create a bundle. That's what a bundle is used for. And I'm going to call this pass data is equal to new bundle. Then I need to put the contact ID inside of my bundle. And to do that, I go pass data, put serializable, and just come in here and click on that so I don't have to type that out. And then the key is going to be contact ID. And the value that we're going to be passing into it is going to be contact ID, which is what was passed into this method. Then we need to say then we need to create a contact fragment, and I'm just going to call it contact fragment. And then if I want to put the contact ID inside of the bundle, I'm going to go contact fragment, set arguments, pass data. That's going to get the ID over there so that we have the right contact information inside of Census App so that we can change it. And then we're going to return contact fragment and change that to uppercase F. Now what we're going to do, since this is going to return an instance of contact fragment to be displayed inside of the Census App, what we're going to do is we're going to need an onCreate method for this guy right here, and we're also going to need to pull in the right contact ID, because this guy up here basically gets the contact ID passed to it, and we have to get this library, of course, and then it stores it. And then down here for onCreate, before it displays the fragment inside of the window, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the right contact information is going to be displayed. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace contact new contact, which is just a generic contact, and instead get a contact that matches the contact ID that was passed to this guy. So what we're going to do is get the value from contact ID that was passed in, UUID, contact ID is equal to, and we're going to have to cast this to UUID, just like before. To get the data that was passed in, we used get arguments, and then get serializable, because that's what was used to put it inside of there, so we need to get it out. And then to get the data, we just need to say what the name was. And there it is. Now we got that. So we have the unique identification number for the right contact that we want to display on our screen. So we need to just get the contact then with the matching ID. And to do that, we go and call all contacts, which has the array list inside of it that contains every single contact that we ever use. And to get that data, we go get activity, and then we go get contact and say, okay, well, we need the contact ID that you want for the matching contact, and then it's going to return it and give me the right contact that I want to use. And get contact, if you jump over here and let's open up all contacts just so we can see that. Do a find and a paste and a find, and there we are. And you can see right there, that is the method that we're calling. We're passing in the ID that we want, and in exchange, if it finds a matching contact, it's going to return that contact. Otherwise, it's going to return null. So that's what's going on with that, and that's all we're doing with all contacts. So that's how you call another class and get that information that we wanted. But then, a long time ago, okay, so we know that we're pulling in the right contact, but we would need to display that contact information on our screen. So I'm just scrolling right through here. And as I do it, I notice, hey, wait a minute, I have a to-do here. And what was that to-do telling me to do? This was from the previous tutorial. I need to change, whenever the checkbox is clicked on, I need to change it from false to true. And if it's true, I need to change it to false. Well, one of you guys might have went in there and already did this, but simply to get rid of that to do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say not, and I'm basically going to get whatever the current value is and make it the absolute opposite, just like it says there. And now that I have that corrected, I can get rid of that to do, save that guy. But then also, I'm going to need to come in here and get the values for our current contact, which we know because we know our contact ID, and put them in the right components. Well, what are the right components? Let's just scroll up here, find our components, and there you can see there's the editable text box and our checkbox finally. So I'm just going to copy those, come back down here, paste those in, and then get rid of all this extra junk that we have here. Okay, so if I want to set the value for our editable text box, I can just go set text to, and this is going to be, since we know what our contact is, we just go, hey, get me the name that I want for my contact, and that's it. Going to do pretty much exactly the same thing for this other editable text area, and this other one, and this other one. The only difference being this is going to be not get name, but this is going to be get street address, and this is going to be get city, and then this one's going to be get phone number, which I believe is what I called it. Yes. But how do we change our contact checkbox to make sure that it's checked when it needs to be checked? Simple. We just go set checked. And then we're going to call contact and get contacted, which is going to return true or false and determine if it's checked or not. And that is everything we need to do with contactFragment.java. And as you can see over here, Census App no longer has an error, so everything's working great. So that basically puts us in a situation where we have to tell Fragment Contact List what to do when one of the contacts is clicked on, and make all that interaction occur, and also make Census App then display the right contact. So let's take a look at what we need to do with Fragment Contact List. So here we are inside a Fragment Contact List, and basically all I need to do is put in an on list item clicked. And I have to figure out exactly where I want that to go. I'm guessing I want it to go after on create, but before the contact adapter. So let's go in here, right click, come into source again, override implement methods. This guy pops up and I have to look for on list item clicked, and there it is. So put a check in there. Insertion point, I want to put it after on create, and then go OK. And it put me exactly where I wanted it to be. So I'm going to take all this stuff out of here. And this is kind of self-explanatory. This is list view. This is the actual view. This is the guy that really matters. This is the position. That's going to tell us the very, very specific item that was clicked on. And then we have an ID down there. Well, basically, we need to figure out which contact was clicked. So I'm just going to call this clicked contact. And find that out, we need to convert this into contact adapter. And then go get list adapter, and then specifically get item. And the specific item that we want is going to be whatever item is in the position that was passed into this. Then we need to pass the context with get activity. So we're going to create a new intent, which is just the intention to do something. I'm going to call it new intent and new intent. And like I said, we're going to have to call get activity to get the context, which is going to allow us to define which new activity is going to be displayed on our screen, which is going to be Census App. And there we go. Then to our new intent, we need to put in some extra information. And that extra information is going to be the contact ID, so that we'll have the right contact information on there. And to get the right contact information, we go contact fragment, and we say we want contact ID, and then we have to put the value in, which is, we know that this was the contact that was clicked. Let's go down to the next line. So to find out what the ID is for the contact that was clicked, we go click contact, and then get ID number for that contact. And there we go. So that information is going to be passed in there just like we need it. Then what we're going to need to do is call start activity for result. And start activity for result is basically used whenever you want to get a result from an activity, which is the contact ID. We want that. And we want to get that information when this activity ends, and then pass that information over into our new activity. So we're going to go new intent, which is our intention to call Census App and pass in the contact ID and the ID number, that information, and that is how we are going to call Census App and have it open, and not only open, but also open and display the right information. Now to get start activity for result to work and make sure that that information is passed in, we need to use another method. And that method is onActivityResult. And to display it, I'm just going to come in here and go source, override implement methods. And then inside of fragment, we're going to look for onActivityResult, which is right here. And after onListItem click, that sounds like a good place for it. Go OK. And there that is. And request code, what that's going to tell you is where did this request come from. And then we are going to have result code, which I wouldn't worry about all these different things because they're automatically generated. This is basically returned by the child activity if you care, and then you have the actual data, which is what's important. Then with this guy, we're going to call contact adapter, get list adapter, and then we're going to call notify data set changed, which is going to notify everyone that needs to know that the data has changed and that we need to react to that. And that is basically all we need to do with Fragment Contact List. It really might seem a lot more complicated than it is, but basically all we are doing here is saying, hey, an item has been clicked. Okay, well, we know we need to figure out which item was clicked. And we're going to store that specific contact inside of a object called click contact. Okay, how are we going to get that? Well, you passed in the position, and the position is, you can just think of that as an index in our array. So we're basically saying, okay, what contact specifically is in our array at index named position? All right, we get that. All right, so now we know that we need to open up Census App. All right, well, that means we have the intention to do something. So we need to create an intent. All right, now that we have that, how are we going to pass over the contact information? No problem. We're going to call a method called putExtra, and we're going to get our contact ID from the currently clicked contact that we have right here. We're going to store it inside of there. Then we're going to pass that data over into Census App so that it can use it. And then this guy down here is going to notify every single time that data has changed in any way. So that's basically what's going on. If you understand the adapter, which we talked about previously, nothing else should give you any problems. Now, in making this, the only thing that sort of was an issue is inside of list item contact, it was very possible that whenever the person goes to click in the checkbox, that the whole entire contact is open. So what I decided to do is to go inside of listitemcontact.xml and specifically inside of the checkbox and set enabled for this guy to be false by default. But more importantly, I'm going to say Android, and I'm going to say that it is not focusable, which means if they go, let's go down here and retype that in, go Android. And if we don't want it to be focusable, which means we don't want it to be clickable, we're going to go in here and also say false for that. And there we go. So now we got it all done. Let's go in here and execute. And if we execute this guy, you're going to see inside of here, there is our list that we had previously. And if we specifically click on one of these guys, it's going to open up. And there is all Paul Smith's information. And since this is a census type of app, let's say we wanted to come in here and re-verify Paul's name, and maybe it's not quite Paul or something else. It's Paulo Smith. I don't know. I'm just making this up. And we could type in Paulo Smith, and then we can come in here and say, oh, well, it's not 123 Main Street. It's 123 Main Avenue. And we could say, I don't know. I'm just guessing that all this stuff is incorrect. It's not really Derry. It's actually, I don't know, I'm just going to type in Ford, and that telephone number is 1213, and yes, we contacted Paul, or Paulo, so there we go, and all that's set. And then we can bounce back out of here, and you can see it now says Paulo Smith, and then if we click inside of there, you're going to see all the information pop up again. So there is the Census app. We're still going to be adding a ton of additional information to it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. Otherwise, till next time.